Every week, thousands of households in San Francisco count on food assistance to feed their families. We asked how we could use our autonomous vehicles to help. Cruise partnered with SF New Deal and the San Francisco Marin Food Bank to deliver meals to those in need as part of our Cruise for Good program.
Our mission as San Francisco Marin Food Bank is to end hunger. This mission is critical now more than ever before, and especially in this moment as costs are rising. As a result of our partnership, Cruise has now delivered 2 million meals to our community members. That's what partnership looks like.
SF New Deal is a new nonprofit started in 2020 to connect workers, small businesses, and the community with neighbors in need. And our first project was buying meals from local restaurants and delivering them to food insecure individuals here in San Francisco. And that's a project that we partnered with Cruise on since the beginning.
At Cruise, we are committed to working with communities to build a new kind of transportation that better serves people and the cities they live in.
The Cruise for Good North Star is simple. Partner with nonprofits and organizations that know their communities best. Serve people that are the most vulnerable. And go where the need is greatest.
Long-term partnership deeply rooted in every city we're in, that's our Cruise for Good commitment. It is anchored by our pledge to dedicate at least 1% of our fleet to serving important community needs. As Cruise begins providing rides to the public and expands to new markets, strengthening local communities is our guiding light.
People say, we're trying to make the world a better place. We're trying to change the world with technology. You're literally changing the world.
Yeah.
I mean, this is changing people's quality of life. It's creating the opportunity for people to access service in new ways. The fact that it's electric, it's huge.
Wonderful. Well, good morning. Now, those of you who know me know what's about to happen. I come from a tradition of call and response, right? Where we acknowledge that when we're in spaces like this, we are giving and receiving energy. Now, we're always doing that, but we certainly are doing that in this moment. So what I'm going to invite you to do is give all of us some energy by your response to this question. How are you this morning?
Great. There we go.
All right. That's getting there. That's getting there. So listen, I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm so excited to be in conversations with both of you. Just quickly, my name is Tulaine Montgomery. I'm co-CEO of New Profit. New Profit is a venture philanthropy that for more than 20 years has been providing unrestricted capital and customized capacity supports to breakthrough social entrepreneurs in the United States who are doing their very level best to solve our problems, our nation's most persistent challenges. And it's so good to be in conversation with these two great leaders. I have here Don Gips, president of the Skoll Foundation, and we have also Rob Grant, senior vice president, I want to get your title right, senior vice president, government affairs and social impact at Cruise, the company that we just learned about through that video. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into it. We're here to talk about the power really of cross-sector work and the role of entrepreneurship. And at New Profit, we believe deeply that in order to change systems, that we really do have to work across sectors. And so my first question, a lot has been said about impact. Impact is one of those words that if we surveyed this room, we'd get many different definitions. And so first, I'd love for you each to just introduce yourself a little bit more fully to the group and tell us, how do you define impact for your institution? Let's start with you, Don.
Well, first, it's so great to be on stage with Tulaine and with Rob, a neighbor and an incredible partner in social change. And at Skoll, we really believe that, and I personally believe, we're facing a crisis across our country and around the globe. And we need to invest in new social innovations that will drive transformational change. At Skoll, we work on 5 issue areas: pandemics and health system strengthening, democracy and governance, racial justice, climate, and inclusive economic growth. I could take a survey, but I think most of you would agree we're not doing so well on most of those issues. And we need to step up our game, find new ways to innovate. And at Skoll, we believe in doing 3 things: investing in the partners we work with, connecting them, and I think this is part of connecting them to government, connecting them to business, And we hope all of you who are in this room will help join us in that connecting and then championing these new solutions that will drive the changes we need. These problems that we face as a society are all interconnected. And if we take a siloed approach, we won't solve them. We need to work across the issue areas and across sectors to get there.
Absolutely. We're going to dig into that because there's a lot of resonance with what you said, but yet it's not happening. That cross-sector collaboration you described that we need done, we're not seeing it. So we're going to get into why not? What's getting in the way? But please introduce yourself more fully, and how do you define impact for Cruise?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the panel. It's great to be with Don, you, Tulaine, and thanks to SIS for hosting Cruise. So at Cruise, as you saw from that video, hopefully it was apparent, we are a self-driving car company. We're the leader in the world, we believe, in developing that technology. Recently, we became the first company to launch a commercial service, meaning you can get in our cars and take a paid ride and go from point A to point B in San Francisco. And I mention that because that's the first in the world of that kind, right? And so it's a really nascent industry. Mm-hmm. So for us at Cruise, impact really comes down to, we have a product that we believe is going to be really transformational in the future. And we need to be intentional about how that product helps those communities in which we operate. And so we've really focused on, as a transportation company, what are the things that we can actually influence? Mm-hmm. You mentioned 5, 6 great topics. Now, Cruise as a company, we're small and we're focused on transportation. We may not be able to influence all those, but what we can influence are issues of sustainability. Mm-hmm. So that's why we've chosen to be all electric from the start. Right. We can influence issues of accessibility. Mm-hmm. So we are purpose building a new type of vehicle that will be wheelchair accessible in a manner that no standard vehicle is built today. And we want to be equitable. So whether it comes to the infrastructure we're building, such as those charging stations, we want to make sure that both people have an opportunity to use this technology in an equitable manner. So where is it being used? Where is it available? Who is it being used by? So we've partnered with groups like EV Noir to really understand how access to this transportation can be transformative for certain communities that have often been left behind in the transportation space. And then how are we employing folks in this field? And so we have a lot of kind of cross partnerships with nonprofits, one in San Francisco called Human Made, where people looking for second careers or new careers in this kind of new world of technology, we go and try to educate them about some of the technologies that they can work on and really be a part of that future economy.
Wow, that's incredible, Rob. So I'm sitting here and you just said self-driving cars on the road, and I'm still sort of like going back like to the Jetsons, you know what I mean? And the fact that what many of us have seen as a in the future sort of fantastical idea is actually happening right now. And the thing there's a lot that's exciting about that. But one of the things that's exciting is that it enables you to really start with equity at the center of how you approach everything. You talked about the workforce, you talked about the access, you talked about the design, right, of the vehicles. And I'm lifting those things up because as we are, right at the precipice of so much new, right, and so much innovation, that actually presents an incredible opportunity to do, Rob, what you're describing, right?
100%. And as folks who know me know, that's why I came to Cruise. I said, if we're going to be able to do this anew, we're going to do it right. Or at least we're going to try to do it right. And if we fail, other people can help us get it right. Yeah. And so it's been intentional from day one with the help of the leadership at Cruise. So we're very proud. Now, we've got a long way to go, sure. But it's a start.
That's right. So Don, back to you. Now you run, Skoll is a global philanthropy, and you talked about the issue areas that you focus on. We've talked so much about the change of the past 2 years, and we say it so much, it's almost like we're numb to it, right? But the pandemic, which is not over, by the way, right? Pandemic, racial reckoning, the global crisis that we're in. How do you, as the leader of a global philanthropy, in the midst of such an ever-changing context, prioritize for yourself and for your team?
It's a really profound question and hard and keeps me up at night. Yeah. Step back for a second, and before the pandemic, if you had asked me what would have united America and united the globe, I would have said either an attack from aliens from out of space, like all the movies we've seen, or something like a pandemic, where the only way you can solve it, literally the only way you can solve it, is working together as a global community or even a national community. I got to tell you, we as a society have failed that test 100%. And it points to a lack of trust in our institutions that I think is sort of the core problem. When we look across that issue set, until we can rebuild confidence in our institutions, and that's part of that is our information ecosystem and how we all get our facts, we have a huge challenge. So that is one of the areas we're prioritizing at Skoll. How do you start to think about rebuilding that healthy information ecosystem in a way where we can at least start with a common set of facts and then look at solutions? I think the other big focus for us, because these problems are so interconnected, is finding what we call systems orchestrators. And New Profit has funded many of them, but people who can work across sectors, who can connect the most marginalized in their communities with existing power. And one example of that, there's a group called Hyphen here in DC that we met with yesterday that is literally all this money that came out of the federal government through the Build Back Better Act. How do you connect all that money to rebuild communities in a more equitable way? And it's not a lack, there's huge resources that have now been freed up. We're at a moment where we can help build trust in those communities by making sure that those dollars reach the people who know what the problems are in their own communities in a profound way. So systems orchestrators like Hyphen, or the United Healthcare team was talking about social determinants of health. If we can start responding around those, and there's a great systems orchestrator called the Health Initiative, THI, that is driving building these social determinants of health actually into the CMS system so that Medicare and Medicaid require people to respond to those and improve health and reduce costs at the same time.
Right.
These are the innovations we need to be driving forward.
So that's really powerful. So information ecosystems, and that really plays into how we at New Profit understand systems change. Like, the policy matters, the capital matters, the talent matters, but if you don't address the mental models, the core beliefs that hold the conditions of a system in place, then you're almost doomed to repeat the same challenges, at best maybe have a little bit of incremental reform. So it's really powerful that you're saying prioritizing information ecosystems. And it's maybe not where people would automatically go because there's so many things sort of screaming at us that need our attention, but you're going to the root of it by addressing that. And then systems orchestrators, we love THI and support them at New Profit, but people who are looking across systems and across sectors. So I want to give you, Rob, a chance to talk about how you prioritize, but then we're going to get into, if we need systems orchestrators and we need to work across sectors, what's getting in the way of us doing that more consistently? So we'll get there. But first, how do you, in this era of change and building the future now, how do you prioritize at Cruise?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's so many issues that we could address, but what we try to do is tie our mission, which is to improve quality of life in cities, with our product and our people, and that's where we can prioritize our efforts in this field. So what that means is we partner with organizations in every city that we operate, right? Those who know their communities best, and each community has different challenges. And then we look, secondly, to serve the most vulnerable people in those communities. And then third, where is that greatest need amongst the most vulnerable? And if we can address that issue through transportation or some of the other technologies embedded in our system, that's where we prioritize. And so that's played out in a few different ways and throughout the world.
Powerful. So, Don, you're looking at the root. Rob, you're looking at the need and listening for the need and adapting and responding to the need. Powerful. And it does show how both of you as leaders are using this sort of systems cross-sector lens. So let's get into it. We have about 5 minutes. The hook is strong here at the Social Innovation Summit. If we go over, we will be dragged off the stage. So we won't do that. I don't want that for any of us. But let's talk about it. I mean, both of you talked about partnerships across sectors for the institutions and businesses you run, but it really is not yet the norm to have meaningful, authentic, healthy partnerships across sectors. What's your take on why not? Like, what do we need to change or redefine for business and the social impact and social sector to partner more effectively?
Take it first.
Sure. Yeah, I think what we've learned through this process and what we're seeing is what works well for us is that these partnerships, right? We're partnered with San Francisco Marin Food Bank, an organization called SF New Deal. I've mentioned a few others before. But what we've learned is they can be a real driver of innovation within our own company. So before we've ever delivered anything in one of our autonomous vehicles, we delivered meals for SF Marin Food Bank. And really what we learned is they hadn't had a meal delivery system, right? They were used to everybody coming down to the food bank. And this left some folks underserved, housebound, seniors, and others. And during the pandemic, getting people to come out of the house and congregate in an open space was difficult. So we innovated and they innovated, and really what it turned out to be for both of us is a great deal of learnings, both in terms of how do we help people, but also, from our business end, how do we deliver meals without a driver in the vehicle, right? For them, how do we prioritize taking in orders, and how do we make sure that they've been delivered to the right people? And so, what I see from that is a small example, but is there can be innovation and benefits beyond just, how do you help individuals, but for the companies and for the nonprofits to learn and grow and expand.
That's a really interesting, it's a very specific example, but very helpful. There's a lot of listening in it. There's a lot of mutual respect in it. There's not sort of a overly hierarchical approach to relationship. It's not overly transactional, it's adaptive. I'm just sort of naming some of the features of the partnership that seem to make it powerful. Don, what would you say to this? Like, why don't we see more cross-sector partnership?
I mean, Tulaine, I spent a fair bit of time in Africa, and there's an old African proverb, you can go fast if you go alone, and you can go far if you go together. I think it takes time. It takes, as you both just said, listening, trying to understand where everybody's objectives are. And the other thing it takes is taking your ego out of it. There's a Washington expression, you can get a lot done if you don't take any of the credit for it. In this town, it is profoundly true in this sector. And it's one of the gifts. I've been at Skoll 3 years, but Skoll, Jeff, who founded it, believed in building platforms for change. And as a platform, what are you trying to do? You're trying to connect these dots and bring these people together, because this is a team sport. These problems got here by group action, and if we don't come together and include the people at the bottom of the pyramid in the solutions to these problems, we're never going to make the progress we need to. And it's a threat to every company in the room, to democratic society, if we don't figure out how to address these.
So I hear some resonance in the room. So if we get this right, if we heed, the guidance, if we look at some of the examples that we see with companies like Cruise, what will it look like in, let's say, 5 years? If we get this right, if the business leaders in this room and the entrepreneurs in this room and all of us who care about a thriving society, what will be different? What will we see that's different from how it is today? I know that's a big one. Got to go in big.
You go first. You only got one sector. I've got to describe 5.
No, so I'll be quick. I think what we see here and what I hope, it's kind of like the spirit of Silicon Valley where we're centered, which is business pulling government forward on this, right? There's so much inaction in government for lots of reasons, and you're trying to address this in different ways. But if we have the business sector working with the nonprofit sector, much like how we say, move fast and let the regulations catch up, I feel like in this space, business can do the same thing. We can start to address things, and I think that's the expectation of our employees as well. That's changed. Employees want to see businesses lead in this. So I think that's what will be different in 5 years.
That's powerful. And what you said, I do want to underscore, because I know there are some folks who hear business leading government and think about sort of the shadow side of that, right? Like that's been done in some ways that are not healthy for our society. But what you're talking about is business that is guided by proximate insight, that's a meaningful partnership and relationship. You gave specific examples. So it's not about repeating some of the things that have happened that have not been so good for our democracy, but building something very different.
Yes. Yeah, and I think Paramount spoke to that in the earlier panel as well.
That's right, absolutely. Don, you got 5 seconds.
I'm out of time. I can't solve the world's problems. I do hope anyone in the room who wants to work with Skoll on any of these issues, Kather and Daniel, raise your hand. We've got a couple team members here. Come find us. I think we have to join together if we're going to create the social innovations that can change this world. And I hope in the next 5 years when we come back here, we may not be announcing $100 million on stage, but hopefully we'll be announcing some great partnerships to solve these problems.
Absolutely. So let's get started moving in partnership. Thank you guys so much.